I'm Jess.
And I'm Wes.
And we are the
The
Ontario
Ontario Wildmen.
On this show, we travel back and revisit the significant moments, the heroes, the villains, the legends, and all things professional wrestling in Ontario, Canada. West, we keep on rolling like a Tim Hortons Cup, baby. Roll down the rim to win, roll up the rim to win. We keep on going and going and going. We're coming back, episode 7. Off our biggest episode yet, our two-parter of Whipper Watson, buddy.
This is beyond awesome. 7 episodes of this, doing what we love, talking what we love, sharing with everybody, and I know you are too, so appreciative of all the people who've chimed in. Our numbers for an independent podcast, and I don't know nothing about that, but the numbers look awesome to me. I couldn't be happier. And this just means, like you said, you've already planned out 2022. We're looking at 2023 already. That's how dedicated we are. That's how passionate we are. It's unbelievable awesome.
Yeah, I think I've planned out up to 2024 of just ideas of what we could do.
Yeah.
Just to say, that we don't take it serious. I try to stay as historical as possible and think of cool things that we could talk about for everything. But last month we talked about Whipper Watson and our two-parter. Part 1 we did up to 1959.
59.
And then we did 1960 to basically his death, and it was just like overwhelming response for that one, man.
And the response on our Facebook pages of people replying about the episodes was phenomenal too. And we just kept on posting Whipper stuff on our pages, and it just kept getting loved and loved and loved. Obviously, we could never talk about how beloved he was or how great he was or anything, but everyone seems to really have enjoyed it just as much as you and I did planning it and you doing most of the research, which was fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of great resources out there, right? Like Slam Wrestling, AC's Maple Leaf Wrestling website. Lots of resources out there. But to put it all together was actually really fun, and it was a great lesson for me too, right? To kind of learn where Whipper was, who he worked with. I mean, to me, Whipper Watson and Gene Kiniski go hand in hand. You know what I mean? Probably the biggest Canadian rival ever, like Canadian versus Canadian. Would you think?
For sure, without a doubt, because they traveled right across the country. They wrestled the numbers. What we mentioned, wrestling each other was phenomenal. Like 1 month they wrestled each other, 9 times was it? Oh man, back in the 50s. This is not in the cut and paste cards of today where the boys are just traveling around doing the same thing, or even in the 90s or the 2000s or whatever. This was back when cards meant something, and the boys were taking the show around the country.
Yeah, exactly.
Coast to coast, baby.
One thing about our last episode is that we had a little bit of a mishap with our contest.
Yes.
So
that was my fault for saying one thing and doing something else, and then you listened to me and you said what I said, which was wrong. So yeah,
yeah. So we're gonna make it up to everybody, and we hope that this works this time.
Yes.
So our email is Wes and Jesse Wildman1@gmail.com, not Hotmail.
Yep.
So we're going to do something for everybody to make it up because we feel horrible about it. There was no way of fixing it. There was no way of editing it. And we don't blame anybody but me and Wes's miscommunication. So this episode, and only this one episode, if you email the right email, Wes and Jesse Wildman1, that's WESANDJESSE WILDMAN 1 at gmail.com, and tell us what you think of the show, any topics you want us to cover, or ask a question for the show, or request a match for What Did You Watch? If you do that and provide us with your shipping information, you will receive a piece of wrestling history. And it is free shipping worldwide to make it up to all you guys for our big mistake last month on our episode.
It was unfortunately we didn't do this paper-wise. We did it vocally. So it just takes 2 seconds to say Hotmail instead of Gmail or vice versa. And I feel bad. Some of our loyal listeners, didn't you get my email yet? And it's like, you know what? We're never going to get your email. Not because of what you did, because of what we did. So, Jesse, I'm going to ask you a question right now about this. You're looking behind me, hopefully, and you can see what the wrestling room is looking like. It's taking place. There's stuff on the walls.
See those yellow magazines? I own, I think, 1 or 2 myself. I found at a comic book store.
Yes. What? So yeah, we got enough stuff here. Hey, quit peeking into my room, man. We got enough stuff here that we can send out some really nice stuff to our loyal listeners for sure.
As long as you don't send me that reserved parking fans only Maple Leaf sign, bud.
Oh, that's it's supposed to be scratched out. It's supposed to say Winnipeg Jets.
Oh yeah, that's right.
It's never going to say Winnipeg Jets ever.
Yeah, so between me and Wes, we have a lot of stuff, and we feel bad about what we did, and we want to make it up. So again, if you email Wes and Jesse Wildman1 at gmail.com with a request of an episode, tell us what you think. You gotta talk about our show and just let us know what you think. Request a match for us to watch for our segment, What Did You Watch? Even if it's an independent match and it's on YouTube, we'll watch it and talk about it on the show. We have nothing against independent promotions. And if you're an independent guy listening to our show and you're like, hey, you should check these guys out and talk about it on your show, no problem. No problem doing that.
We want to stay as topical as possible, but on this note, we are history based. So, but we have absolutely no. I agree. Excuse me, Jesse. I agree 100%. No, it's no issue at all whatsoever. Something that's on YouTube from last week, even. Hey, we're in.
Yeah, I'm in. Okay, we have a big show today. We have our first ever special guest episode. Wes, you want to tell everybody who our special guest is before we jump into the wrestling news?
Sure. His name's Rob Fuego, and he has been a wrestler, trainer, and promoter in Ontario for a long time. I don't have his stats right in front of me, but that's okay.
I did some research.
Jesse did research?
Yeah.
No, I've met Rob before on something we'll talk about later in the interview that's special to my heart, like crazy special, and we'll let him talk about that. But yeah, he's been around, and he's an awesome guy.
Yeah, man, I can't wait to talk about that later in the show. But before we get into all that, we got some wrestling news to take care of. Ring of Honor going on a hiatus, releases talent. Wes, what could this mean for the wrestling business, man? Ring of Honor, like a lot of big names came out of Ring of Honor. Even old timers like you know guys that came out of Ring of Honor.
I can't imagine. I really don't. Is it monetary? Is it usually promotions at this time of the year are working up to big Christmas shows, whether they're pay-per-views or whatever. I can't even surmise. What's your feeling?
I read a couple things. I read that they're closing doors.
Oh, like
heard that like completely. I've heard that they're just going to go on a hiatus and then rebrand maybe more fan-based wrestling. I also heard rumors of Vince McMahon buying Ring of Honor. I did ask on a Slam Wrestling Facebook post, and Greg Oliver replied, I said, is Vince buying Ring of Honor? And he said no, but apparently the video library is for sale.
Oh,
So imagine that for companies like AEW or WWE who can add that kind of product to your streaming service. Because imagine having a company's like wide worth of Ring of Honor stuff. You're talking Seth Rollins from WWE. You're talking Cesaro WWE, Kevin Owens from WWE. You're talking AEW superstars. You know what I mean? You're talking
yeah.
everybody that's a wrestler now on mainstream TV came from pretty much Ring of Honor once or twice.
So in my eyes, if you're selling your tape library, then it doesn't sound too good because I know that's a lot of money, and whoever's buying it, has the rights to it, et cetera, et cetera. And it's been a big deal. It's been a big video library, whether it's TV shows like back in the day, like Bill Watts. I think they sold their when Crockett bought out Watts back in the day. It was a big deal to get the tapes. And I've heard Cornette talk about getting the tapes, or
Mm-hmm.
not, or selling something but not selling the tapes because he wanted to keep them. And down the road, is it more worthwhile to close your company but keep your tapes for resale? That would make sense to me because you've already got the tapes. They've already been produced. They're already there.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas putting on shows everywhere costs a lot of money, and then you could get rid of all your talent. So doing it in reverse seems bizarre. But I know nothing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame, man.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of big companies out there now for wrestling with like MLW, you have AEW on television, you have, the New Japan freaks that are all over the world. Everybody watches New Japan. You got, the Ontario promotions, the Quebec promotions, like there's just so much out there, and Ring of Honor was like one of those steps I think to get to WWE or AEW, and it's a shame that
Yeah,
they're
for sure.
yeah, right. It's a shame they're closing their doors or doing what. I hope they bounce back and do something and another promotion erupts, but we'll see. I'm not too sure what's going to happen there.
Hmm.
A little controversy talking about WWE surviving. Yeah, she's barely surviving now. Surrounding Charlotte Flair. Did you see any of these articles I sent about you or anything like that?
I've read a bit online. I just don't get the controversy. I don't get the people maybe acting like their shit don't stink or whatever it is, right? What
Yeah.
what is the problem here? Like there
Well,
has
they had a segment on SmackDown, and they were supposed to, because they did a draft, right? So WWE does a draft, right? And if you have Peacock or download the WWE Network, it's all by seasons. They say season 1997, and then you can go through the season of 1997, right?
okay.
It's just easier for people than to look up shows.
Yeah.
It's more convenient for anybody to look it up by year, right? Instead of saying, "Oh, WrestleMania 2 was here," it's like, "Oh, well, in 1985, here's all your
Yeah.
events." So, doing the draft, talent went everywhere. Becky Lynch, who's married to Seth Rollins, um, went to Raw because Seth Rollins went to Raw. WWE's all about keeping the marriages together, which is cool by me. I'm down
Yeah,
for
sure.
that, whatever. But on television, they're supposed to have like, here's the title, whatever, right? Apparently, Charlotte Flair didn't follow the script and threw her title at Becky's feet, and it caused a huge verbal exchange backstage in front of like Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard, who are like, well,
Yeah.
go left and right hand pretty much, right? So even the girl that was involved, Sonya Deville, apparently she was also involved, and she was like, shoot fight Charlotte. She's like, dude, I will beat you up. Like,
Okay.
I will fight you right now. So here's the dilemma. AEW is super hot right now.
Yes.
Can WWE afford to lose one of their biggest female attractions? Because if Charlotte leaves WWE, she's going to go to AEW.
Yeah.
Why? Her dad's a free agent.
Yeah.
Her fiance, Andrade, whatever his name is over there, Andrade, he's really good.
Mm-hmm.
I just forget what they changed his last name to. But Andrade is really good. He's in AEW. So what are you gonna do? You're gonna let go of one of your top talents? One of the girls who first headlined WrestleMania?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you're just gonna say, oh, here's a gift. We're in a ratings war pretty much, even though WWE still wins nationally because they're just a bigger company. But
bigger company, yes.
But still, you think, look at everybody that's going there. It's going to be legit competition.
So
and like
the thought process of losing a name like Flair, but she's also half decent talent, right? So you're losing that name and the talent if there's a problem. And I don't, I always
and the fans.
Is it a work? Is it like,
No.
But what I looked at and what I saw, it was not. So, and I trust you in saying and looking at what you would have looked at, right? So, it's weird. It's weird to me. I think it is. It's people get too big for the britches. My name's Flair. I can do anything I want, even though it's not Ric Flair. It's only Charlotte.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, it's 2021, and no one can do whatever they want. It's just.
Oh, exactly. Exactly.
Right.
So now, contracts and stipulations.
I always laugh at these wrestlers, right? You act so tough, but at the end of the day, you're just us that go to the gym, right? Mm-hmm. And you're professionally trained. Some of them are super tough. Some of them have legit backgrounds and all this, but it's just like, okay, like, we know why you're there. You know what I mean? Yeah, you worked hard, but at the end of the day, relax, bud.
Especially in the WWF. They've made crazy part of their history, say from WrestleMania 1 or just before that, 85 or 84, maybe even before 83, of someone who doesn't fit in the mold, and they, quote, take the mask off him and put it on someone else.
Yeah.
They take the gimmick off of that person, and they might, like, how many freaking toreadors do they have? Like, how many of these? How many of those? I mean, they could squish Charlotte Flair in a half a second and make up, whatever Blair, right? They can do it. He can do it. And, I don't like seeing it. I don't like when it happens. But on the same note, if he's invested money and time in creating these personas, and these people just take it for granted that they do think that their shit don't stink, then poo-poo on them because they're being assholes. Oh, by the way, did our moms dress us this morning?
I have a red one on. Is yours red?
Yeah.
Look at us. Gray sweaters and red shirts. And glasses. We just have opposite colored glasses.
I just bought these. These are my newest dollar store glasses. I had these big frigging Elton John things the last couple of months. I look like a retard.
One thing I want to cover before we go to our first commercial, Wes, is that I went to an independent show on the weekend.
Oh, awesome. Good for you. And you sent me some awesome pictures, and it was so nice to hear that you went out and took the time to go and take in the time for a show.
Yeah, it was awesome, man. I had a great time on Halloween. It was on Halloween. Went to Mississauga, saw Destiny wrestling. I was going to go to Demand Lucha the day before, but I couldn't get tickets. And then, of course, our special guest said he could have got me tickets. So next time I'll be there, I swear. But Destiny Wrestling, it was awesome, man. It was a TV taping.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it was a TV taping. They started the show with Aiden Prince versus Kobe Durst in a cage match for one of the Destiny titles.
Okay.
Fantastic. Aiden Prince is so good. Kobe Durst is so good. These guys are going to go somewhere, man. Yeah. They have the look. They have the attitude. I mean, I believe what they do. I believe that they hate each other. Yeah. There was blood in the ring. I think they did the blood the hard way.
Does Kobe still have really long hair?
Yeah, he's got long hair. He's no longer big and fat, actually. He cut down and he's got, like, size. He looks like, you know what I mean? He looks believed, like, you don't want to get in this guy's face. And he comes out and he looks mean and the crowd's booing him and he's just looking around. He's like,
what does he look like he weighs now? What do you think he weighs?
Oh, I have no idea.
200?
I can't. No. Maybe even more.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but it's muscle mass.
Yeah, last time I saw him, he was kind of slender,
Yeah,
but
no, he's not
super
slender.
talent, super talent, and
Oh yeah,
one of those faces. I mean, the guy's born a heel. Oh, what a face! What an arrogance, right?
yeah. And it just he walks in like with the size now. I'm just like holy shit. And then him and Aiden Prince right off the bat, man, they just got right into it. I loved it, man. It was awesome. Um, what else? Sabotage from Nova Scotia was there. I never even heard of them, but they were great. They were in a tag match. Shane Saber and somebody else. I forget the guy's name, but Sabotage was interesting. They came out with that biker look.
Yeah.
They had the long hair and they were like slow and believable tough guys. To be honest, I liked it. I liked what they did in the ring. I hope they come back to Ontario, and I'll be trying to follow them going forward. Von Vertigo and Lionel Knight was great. I like Von Vertigo. He's a good kid. He's like 24 or something. He's a young kid, but he's got the look. He's got the attitude. He does his own little promotion called Backyard Pro Wrestling. I think I told you about that before.
Yeah.
Scott D'Amore was in the building.
Okay.
As soon as I seen Scott D'Amore, I was like, all right, something big's going to happen tonight. I was like, I got that Sam Muchnick feel. He's in the building. He's in the building. Something's going to happen tonight. It's a TV taping, and he's here. So something is going to go down. I didn't know that that he knew your buddy, though, Terry.
Yeah, they were pals. They've known each other like when he was training.
Really?
Training, yeah. So they've known each other. They had known each other for a long time, and it's too bad because you could have had a chance to speak with him, but that's okay. Next time, right?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to talk to him and get his autograph, but there's a long line. Show started. He was busy. I'm sure he's busy doing everything, and then he was talking to people, and I had to drive a kid home, so I was like, whatever, like, not a big deal. Hopefully he's around this area, so I'm sure the opportunity will arise again.
Did they do any interviews out by the ring, or was it all done inside? Do you think? Like in the dressing room.
Well, Scott D'Amore came to the ring a couple times, and he talked on the microphone. Some wrestlers talked in the ring. Just they set up the next match against each other for the next month, kind of deal. A hair versus mask match.
Okay.
It's going to be good though.
Yeah.
I think so. El Reverso and Gabriel Fierza or whatever you say it.
I've seen El Reverso before too. Yeah.
No, have you?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So he's doing a mask versus hair mask. So hey, not bad. Mm-hmm. Jordan Grace and Lufisto was there. Have you ever seen Lufisto?
No.
Jordan Grace is from Impact and stuff. Lufisto apparently been around for a while, but I met Jordan Grace. That was the female I sent you, the Jack girl.
Yeah, she was jacked all right.
Buddy, they call her Big Mama Pump.
Yeah, like you're not kidding. A little bit on the close to being too much.
She is massive, strong, talented. I love the match though; it was great. The main event though was why it was supposed to be Josh Alexander versus Luke Gallows or Doc Gallows.
Yeah.
Doc Gallows got denied for his COVID passport. Well, he had his COVID shot and everything, but his digital one, they didn't accept it, so he couldn't get across the border.
Okay.
So they had Mike Bailey and Josh Alexander. Now, remember, I think I told you last time I went to Destiny, I saw Josh Alexander and Mike Bailey, and I loved it. Yeah. So for me, Scott D'Amore even said, if you're not happy, I'll give you your money back myself. Right? After a few matches, if you're like, this is not good, I'll give you my money back. And he's like, I'll pay you your money back myself. And I'm just like, well, I'm not going to get my money back. I don't care. Right? Yeah. I'm not that guy. I don't care. Besides that, Mike Bailey, I'm a huge fan of Mike Bailey, and it was kind of cool because I was right. Because at the end of the show, the stipulation was if he didn't beat Josh Alexander, he didn't get an Impact contract. Well, he didn't beat Josh Alexander, and then Josh Alexander cut a promo, and then Scott D'Amore came to the ring and talked some more and offered Mike Bailey a contract because Mike Bailey is probably one of the best unsigned performers in the country.
Okay, cool.
And he's restricted from the States, right? Yeah. So now signing to Impact, Scott's going to get him the work visa, and there we go. Another successful Canadian hitting the mainstream market.
Awesome.
Yeah, man.
How was Josh?
Josh is fantastic. He's so technically sound, and he's so good. And his little boy was there dressed up as dad for Halloween and stuff.
Okay.
It was kind of cute. And like, there's a bunch of other podcasts. Like the mini host was there. Her and her dad do a podcast.
Okay.
A boy named Steven, apparently he had a couple brain surgeries or something like that. But he's a big wrestling fan. It was cool to see all the kids dressed up in their costumes as their favorite wrestlers. I seen a girl dressed up as Adrian Adonis.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was pretty good, man. So I just, I'll take that and thank Destiny and all the Destiny team and for a great time. I really had a great time, and I can't wait to go back.
Good.
Let's get to our first commercial, bud, and then we'll get into what did you watch?
Be sure to follow the Dynasty Wrestling Podcast Network and all of the participating podcasts on social media. The easiest way to find us is on Twitter. You can follow the network at WrestlePods, and you can find all the individual shows at their Twitter accounts. You can find the Wrestling Nostalgia Show at Wrestle Nostalgia, the Ring a Ding Dong Dandy Podcast at Stampede Pod, and the Wildmen Podcast at Wildmen Podcast. Also search us on Facebook for pages and groups. Participate, interact, join the network, and be a fan. Thank you for your support.
Welcome back, and it's time for What Did You Watch? Come on.
Watch.
What did you watch? What did you watch? Watch. What did you watch? Wes, I sent you something that was pretty cool, man.
You did.
I?
You know what? The stuff you're sending me, Jesse, brings back so many memories. And, I could poo-poo all these guys. I could complain and bitch and moan. But you know what? Hogan was such a force. I was an NWA guy in Toronto here. And, I loved it. And I loved when the Mid-Atlantic came here. But when the WWF took over and Hogan was coming to Toronto on a pretty much regular basis because they had to, because they needed to fill up the gardens, right? It was incredible. He had so much charisma. So, we're talking about wrestling, and but we're also talking about gimmicks, and, we're going to talk about the Chic eventually, right? And the guy didn't do nothing in the ring, nothing except jab and run and just crap, right? He wasn't a wrestler. He was just a guy. And I'm watching Hogan in this match, which is 1996 Hollywood Hogan versus Macho Man Randy Savage from Halloween Havoc, right? And I remember seeing this. I do. And you know what?
Two of the biggest 80s stars, though.
It's awesome. It wasn't. These guys aren't going to give you a technical match together. Savage or Steamboat might, or Roberts or DiBiase, but not Hogan and Savage. And the ducking out and the stalling and some of the parts were stupid, like the glasses. I would have slapped them in the head myself, right? But I enjoyed it. I thought that these two guys did what they did for the show and for the title and for the match and for the pay-per-view, and everything they needed to do was 100%. I really enjoyed it. And the Liz thing, whatever. It made sense, right? To have her involved. And she did a pretty good job, by the way, because word was that, she didn't like getting involved because she had problems with script and stuff. So I hear. But the only downfall, and it's a craw in a lot of people's jaws that have been longtime fans, when the ref steals the heat, that blows it, just completely blows it.
Now, for fans that don't know what you're talking about, and younger fans are like, oh, what does he mean? Why don't you give an example of that? So
they had a ref bump. The regular ref goes down. And they had already mentioned, the announcers, and Heenan was one of them. I don't know who the other two guys were. They had already mentioned that after Nick Patrick got hurt last week, so you knew something was coming up. So yeah. Nick Patrick is one of the senior referees of WCW at the time. He comes running to the ring, and he's got a neck brace on. So one of the guys was pitting someone else. it was Savage pinning Hogan, right? So the rep, Nick Patrick, gets in the ring and he slams one and he slams two and he goes to slam three and he grabs his neck because he's got a neck brace on because he was injured last week, and then he falls over and it's like oh my god, and you know he did a good job of it. I mean, it was plausible to a certain degree, but he stole the complete heat from the show. These are two of the biggest wrestlers of all time, and some puny ref is stealing the heat. I thought it was pathetic, and they even kept focusing on him like after the fact, like it was like a third wrestler. Like, you know, when a wrestler comes in to interfere, it's usually for a special reason, and it's a wrestler, not a referee. It was pathetic, but the match was great.
What do you think of their, like, do you think they're slower in the 90s? Like, can you compare Hogan Savage in 96 to maybe like 86? Like, you say technical match, like, yeah. Would you think this Halloween Havoc match was better than the WrestleMania 5 match when it was Hogan and Macho? I'm pretty sure, yeah.
I think that because of different times, different company, different settings, two guys roles were reversed.
Yeah, you know, NWO was the biggest thing in
90s. Yeah, it was huge, right? It was such a huge thing. And so a lot of times heels don't have to do as much as faces do, which was reversed for Savage when he was a heel because he was the guy who was carrying the match because he could. Hogan couldn't, and I enjoyed it. And like I said, you know what? It's when I start seeing this, I'm not going to go search it myself. But when you send me something like this to watch, and please just keep sending me stuff like this, because you know what? It's going to reinvent my memory on what I did actually see, not being judgmental. It was a great match. Unfortunate about the ref, but it was a great match. These guys did what they had to do for a pay-per-view and everything. The strutting, the posing, the jumping out of the ring, even DiBiase being at ringside, and with Liz too. I get it. No problems at all. But when the ref steals the heat.
It was like a flashback of an 80s match with Savage and Hogan.
Well, a flashback of the Hebners and when they used to do the double switch because they were twins, right?
Oh, okay, there you go.
And Dave Hebner, the two referees from the early days of WWF pay-per-views and stuff. I talked to Jim Conley, who's one of our friends, and he's been reffing now for about 20 years.
Yeah, old school.
Yeah. And he says, you know, they've asked me to do this and they've asked me to do that. I don't want to get involved. I don't want to take any heat away from the wrestlers. It's their job. I'm just the ref. Now, I've seen him do subtle things, like really subtle things, or a couple.
And I've seen him smash a beer can over his head.
Yeah, after the match. Yeah, but
no, during the match, Jock Sampson, and Nunzio went like this, triple cheers, chugged a beer, and then Conley just went bang, bang, and the beer went everywhere and started bleeding on the floor.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, Jim.
Oh, Jim.
I've known Jim since the early 80s, and to see a guy who's basically just a tiny bit older than me following his passion is also another thing it's so cool to see, and I love seeing people follow their passion like what we're doing, which is fantastic. What were you scheduled to see?
Okay, so I was supposed to watch something, but then I told you about some old school stuff on the WWE network.
Yes.
And you're like, give it a go. So I went so for people who have WWE network in Canada, I went on my bell box. I put in and search WWE on demand, right? And then you go to the in-ring section, and then there's an old school section. And I'm like, oh, this is new, added to my TV. And it was Madison Square Garden, 1984. And I'm like, okay, well, I have to watch this. Like
1984?
Yeah.
Like a whole taped show from 1984?
Yeah.
Cool.
That's what I'm saying. There's 4 or 5 more episodes I got to watch.
Okay.
So this one, it started off with like some guy I didn't know. I should have wrote his name down. Versus Tonga Kid.
Okay.
Tonga Kid was Jimmy Snuka's buddy, right?
replacement slash son slash cousin slash whatever.
Yeah, whatever. He's on dark side of the ring. Some of the matches that stood out to me, though, one was Rocky Johnson, Tony Atlas, Ivan Putski versus Roddy Piper, Paul Orndorff, and Dr. David D. Schultz.
Okay.
I was just like, damn. And like Rocky Johnson and Putski and Atlas, they're just jacked.
Yeah.
All you see is muscle on these guys. And then Piper struts out, eh? And he's got, the crowd just boos the shit out of him. He's got police officers walking him to the ring. He's got this arrogant, smug look on his face. And he's strutting and mobbing his head. And look at me, I'm king shit. And I'm just like, dude, I've never seen anything like this. Like, Piper was always a good guy in my life, right?
That's right. Yep.
So to see him like strut down like that, and like the first taste of heel Piper was WrestleMania 1.
Yep.
That I would know of.
Yeah.
And then I don't know who you consider a heel or face in the boxing match at WrestleMania 2 for Piper versus Mr. T. Right? Like, yeah. You look at you laughing, eh? You remember that?
So that's pretty interesting. 6 pretty interesting guys, and yeah.
Dr. David G. Schultz was out of WWF shortly after.
Yeah.
Because of that whole
John Stossel thing.
Yeah, he slapped John Stossel. And that's the only reason, and that's, I hate bringing this up in the Wildman group, but it's true. Guys, my age and my era know Eddie Mansfield through the John Stossel stuff.
Yep.
Right? We don't know him for working for the Wildman and being a talented wrestler. We know him for exposing the business and saying, hey, this is how they blade. And like, we're like, what the fuck? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, exactly. If you didn't know that, you watched that show, you would have went berserk. Absolutely.
Well, anyways, kind of cool as an Intercontinental champion.
I'm losing you there.
Tito Santana versus.
Yep.
What's that?
Go ahead.
Yeah, we lost each other there for a second. Tito Santana versus J.J. Dillon for the Intercontinental title. Now, it's cool to see J.J. Dillon in the ring because I only know him as a manager.
Yeah, that's strange.
And, yeah.
He was, I mean, what was he doing managing there even? He was an NWA guy, which is...
He was in the ring, apparently.
Yeah, so, yeah, and we know he's a wrestler, but yeah, okay.
Yeah. I'm not a big Tito Santana fan, never have been. I don't know. He's a nice guy, and I'm sure he gets it over. Look at you drop your head and shake your head.
He was talented. I could care less. He never did anything for me whatsoever. Although him and Valentine wrestling for the Intercontinental belt back and forth was a big deal back in the day. Also, big, and the belt changed hands in London, which was really cool.
Oh wow, that's kind of cool.
So what did you?
Another match was.
Sorry.
No, go ahead. What were you going to say?
What did you think about Ivan Putski's talent? Or not?
Good. They're just these big guys, man. They're just big and they slam. And I find back in the 80s, it's all about, oh, look, I am big and stuff. So look at I sell by power slamming you to the mat.
Yeah.
Right. I slam you to the mat. I kick you or whatever. Right. It was, and Rocky Johnson being the Rock's dad, I was like, oh damn. You know what I mean? Like
he was like, I thought he was fantastic all the times I ever saw him. Talent, really good talent, and man, he could throw a drop kick. Oh my God, him and Sweet Daddy Siki were two of the best drop kick artists. Rocky Johnson was like parallel to the ground. Like his drop kicks were amazing. Talent,
really, eh?
Legs were huge. He was huge. Yeah, he was a great talent. I liked him. Plus he's our brother of one of our group members, Ricky Johnson, who wrestled for the Wildmen. So yeah.
Yeah.
And I sat
my favorite match.
I sat at his table with one of the Titans dinners, so that was pretty cool.
Oh, perfect.
Got to talk with him. Go ahead, your favorite.
I want Greg to have another Titans dinner. My favorite match though was Sergeant Slaughter versus Iron Sheik.
Okay.
These guys beat the hell out of each other in that ring.
Yeah.
The crowd was nuts, dude. They went crazy. Like, the Chic strutting around. The Chic's, like, big, and they're beating the hell out of each other. And then at the end of the match, like, they're in the back, beating the shit out of each other in the back. And, like,
Okay.
all you see is a young Vince McMahon get involved, and they're, like, screaming, "You mother... I'm gonna kill you! I'll fucking get you!" And, like, they're not bleeping it out, and I'm just like,
Oh, wow.
yo, man, like, it's, like, legit a shoot. Like, these guys want to kill each other.
So
And they got, like, wrestlers holding each other back and everything, and Sergeant Slaughter and Iron Sheik are trying to break apart. They're beating each other up. It was nuts, man.
Slaughter was, for a few years, he was in the top 10 every year because he had so much talent. He had so much talent to put guys over, make the baby faces look good, and he was such an arrogant heel. You know, it's kind of silly when you look like that and they make you into a baby face because you just don't look the part. I read something in an article, one of these old school bulletins a few weeks ago about, wow, look at Iron Sheik. His belly button must weigh 5 pounds.
Oh my god.
Because his belly button was stuck out so much, right? Because he drank so much beer or whatever he did. His gut just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Anyways.
The main event was Greg the Hammer Valentine versus Bob Backlund.
Okay.
And I'll be the first to admit, you're not going to be happy. I don't get Bob Backlund, man. I never have. He's just a wrestler, I guess. But even in the 90s, I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I don't get this guy, man.
I had the chance to see him once, and I think I bought tickets for the card, but never went. Something more important came up. That never did anything for me, ever.
Right?
Didn't knock his talent, for sure. And the complete and utter baby face, like, just so crazy, but baby face. But oh man, I don't know. It's like he was always waiting to put a hold on, choreographing. Okay, put your arms up now. I'm gonna do a collar to elbow hook up. I know it wasn't in slow motion, but everything was like choreographed with him. And I don't know if that was because he was so technically sound, because he was such a collegiate guy, or his training from Vern Gagne, or I don't know. Same here. Give me Greg Valentine versus Greg Valentine any day of the year, and I'll watch the match. He could do nothing and just get in the ring and talk, and I'd watch him. I love Greg Valentine. He was fantastic, right from seeing him when he was like 17 or 18 years old. He's fantastic.
I like his old stuff before he was Honky Tonk Man's tag partner.
Yeah,
where they're the rhythm and blues.
Yeah, they had to put someone with Honky that could do something.
Yeah. Did you ever see the famous rival between Greg the Hammer and Roddy Piper? Didn't that come to Toronto?
Oh, I'm sure they wrestled in Toronto, yeah.
Did you ever see them?
No, not against each other, no.
No? Okay. I was just curious.
I saw Valentine defend the Intercontinental title once in Toronto, and it was, I think it might have been Rocky Johnson. I can't remember what it was, and he just walked out of the ring and got counted out. Which was a bit of a crappy ending, but yeah, I like them.
Well, guys, if you have anything that you want us to watch, like you said, we're a history show, but again, we're not open to helping independent wrestlers get noticed, and we'll talk about the match or whatever, what we like. You can email us at Wes and Jesse Wildman1 at gmail.com. We're also on Twitter at Wildman Podcast, and our Facebook groups, Ontario Wrestling Clippings of the Past and the Wildman Tribute page. And we have a new one, but we're going to talk about that a bit later.
Yeah.
But until then, let's get to our second commercial, and then we'll be back with Rob.
Awesome. Grand River Tea is proud to be sponsoring the Ontario Wildmen Wrestling Podcast, produced by Dave Dynasty Podcast Network with Wes and Jess providing the Ontario wrestling historical content. Grand River Tea is providing their tea of choice, Dropkick Yaupon. An ancient plant grown wild in the southern United States, Yaupon is the only caffeinated plant native to North America. It has been used by Native Americans and early settlers in North America for decades. It's organic, sustainably wild, harvested, and hand-picked, and is only touched while growing by sunshine and rain. Dropkick Yaupon is a medium roast tea that has amazing aroma of maple and a beautiful golden color when brewed either cold or hot. Here at Grand River Tea, we take our sourcing seriously, and we want to reduce our carbon footprint and make our teas as sustainable as possible. All our loose leaf teas are gluten-free, vegan, dairy-free, and have no sugar. So put your kettle on and enjoy some Grand River Tea.
Ladies and gentlemen, fans of wrestling, with us now is a well-known name in the Ontario independent circuit. Rob, welcome to the show, buddy, and thanks for coming out and joining me and Wes.
No problem. Happy to be here.
We're excited to talk with you on many angles, Rob, because hey, you've been around a little bit, and most people in Ontario are going to know you. We're not eccentric to Ontario, but we're hoping to blow this right all over the North America eventually. So we could get you gigs like in California or Mexico. You ever wrestled in Mexico?
I did, yeah.
Were you a wrestling fan when you were a kid?
Yeah, as far as I know, I've been a wrestling fan ever since I was a little guy. Back in where I was born in Uruguay, South America, and according to my mother, my earliest, well, I don't want to say my earliest, I kind of remember, but she said I was like infatuated with a wrestler known as the Mummy.
Okay.
He was a big, great guy, dressed up like a mummy, right? And I would imitate him, I'd put my arms out like the mummy and go around like the mummy apparently and take bumps and, throw myself around. And funny enough, years later, I was thinking about that and I sort of went on a Google search and I found very old footage of some guy dressed up. A few people had dressed up over the years back in the, 50s, 60s, and 70s as the mummy. Specifically in the South America, Central America area. I don't know if that was the same guy I saw, but I'm sure it probably was.
We've seen clippings.
Pretty cool.
And we've seen clippings from Central and South America and I can't remember the promoter's name. He's got a really cool name, and he's long hair kind of guy. But we did see a mummy. I've seen pictures of a mummy from back then, but there was, of course, one in like the Central States back in the 70s.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
His name was
even in the Memphis area, I believe, like Jerry Lawler wrestled the mummy. I'm sure he did both circuits down there. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
When did you come to Canada, Rob?
I came in the early 70s. I want to say 1971. So I was about 4 or 5 years old there.
Yeah, Wes was already like 23, so it's all
good. Yeah. Me and Wes are about the same age anyway. So
do you have any memories of wrestling when you first came here?
Well, yeah, here I want to say, because I do recall, and I guess I can confirm it now. Wrestling when I was growing up was always on very late at night, 11:30, sometimes midnight. Depending on, what show you were watching. I know I caught a few times, like, the old George Cannon show every now and then, and some old AWA wrestling stuff. But, wrestling back then, like I said, it was sometimes it was on the weekends like in the afternoons, but as a kid, you're outside playing all the time on the weekends. You know what I mean? Yeah. You're not inside. And so, and back then you had 3-4 channels if you're lucky. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
In the early 80s and in the 70s, right? And TV wasn't a big thing unless, after dinner you'd watch, the $6 Million Man, Happy Days, whatnot.
Yeah,
But like I said, wrestling for the most part was on late at night.
indeed.
So,
And
like I would catch wrestling here, clips of it here and there, and I'm like, oh yeah, I loved it. I watched whatever I could, whenever I knew it was on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Who was your
Then-
favorite wrestler?
What's that?
Who was your favorite wrestler?
Oh well, let me think now. Back when I was a little kid, I don't think I had too many like I said, and what I like to do is like I said, I didn't catch it a lot on TV back then because it was so sporadic, right? The times and but I used to love looking at the wrestling magazines.
yeah.
Mhm.
Right, there was always 2 or 3 of them in the stores, and I'd rifle through them, and I was just drawn to, I think, guys like obviously Andre the Giant and Ric Flair, guys like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those, I think, Ric Flair, I think it was a constant favorite growing up. And not that I saw a lot of footage of him. And when I did catch glimpses of here and there, and, I'd be like, wow, that's him, right? I never got to see him live until like way later, right? I never caught him at the Gardens or nothing like that. But yeah, I would say Ric Flair.
Yeah,
was
Wes
an old
always
big
tells
team.
me that when Ric Flair came to Toronto, he could do no wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ric Flair in Toronto was, so some guys that came here at Maple Leaf Gardens that they were heels everywhere else, but they just were absolved by everybody. Just they were sucked in, and everybody loved Flair, and it was talent just goes to show, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I even heard a story, like I wasn't there though, when Mosca was doing those Mosca Manias. I think the first or second one, they had Ric Flair versus Dusty Rhodes in the main event, and Dusty was trying to get over as a babyface, and people were just booing him. They hated him. They had to switch halfway through the match, heel and face, because it wasn't going anywhere. So Rick had to turn. He did everything he could to, heel on Dusty, but people kept loving it. So they had to switch midway through.
Match, and I have pictures, and it's, you can see in one of the pictures, and I posted the pictures before on some of the wrestling pages. Dusty and Flair are standing across the ring from each other, and it's you can tell that there's something going on, and telepathically, because they're so talented, so creative, you can telepathically they're saying to each other, "Okay, we gotta switch this up," because Baby Doll was one of the managers, and it completely flipped. It was bizarre, but also half the crowd was there just to see Ric Flair, anyways, whether he was good guy or bad guy. Yeah,
Cool.
Definitely.
Rob, when did you decide to get into the wrestling business?
I decided I always wanted to be a wrestler, right? But being only like 5'8" at best. I never, because the guys back then were big, right? They were like not necessarily in shape, but just big men, big guys. You never saw a guy too small back then, right? And if you did, he was getting squashed every week on TV.
that's right.
Other than the midgets, right? Guys are big, burly guys, and I never thought I could be a wrestler until it was the first. Well, it was the lead up to the first Super Brawl pay-per-view, WCW. They were promoting Jushin Thunder Liger.
Yep.
Right? And I'm like, whoa. I go, this guy doesn't look very tall. Doesn't look very big. And then when they were showing highlights, and then when I saw the match that he did with Pillman, I'm like, whoa. And then, they kept going on about how tall he was and how much he weighed. I think they weighed him at 212, 5'6" or 7 at best, right? I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna give it a shot. So I started researching wrestling gyms. Well, researching back then, you tried to find something in the back of the wrestling magazines. Every now and then you'd see an ad for a school, right? The only one I knew of was in Calgary that was in the magazines all the time. Until a friend of mine, a high school friend of mine, told me, hey, I was just watching YTV, and they just did a little episode on some wrestling gym in the city, in Toronto. I was living in Downsview at the time when I was researching, which research means, talk to friends and, So And he said he saw something about it being at Sully's gym. That's all he could remember, right? And seeing back then, you couldn't, PVR anything or go back and check.
Yeah,
right? And I believe I looked up the number for YTV, and I got it, and I called them. I asked them. I think I made a couple of calls, and they said, yeah, it's at Sully's, boys boxing gym downtown. And I looked it up, got the number, right, and called. Went to the payphone and called. And I called during the week, I believe, and that's when the boxing guys were there. And they said, oh, no, call back on the weekend, right?
Yep. And
so I did. I waited the end of the week. I called, and somebody answered the phone. It was Sweet Daddy Siki. Like, hello, this is Sully's gym, right? Kind of sounds like that. And I asked him, I go, yeah, I'm interested in joining your program. What's it all about? Give me the details. And he didn't give me any details at all. He's like, well, we're going to have to have you come in, and we're going to have to talk to you and give you an interview. And I'm like, oh, okay. When can I come in? And I think we set up a date. I went down. Actually, so I went down, and, it was down behind the old Lamport Stadium in this old warehouse of a building, 3 or 4 stories high. They actually filmed the movie The Fly there.
Okay.
Yeah, with Steve Guttenberg. Not Steve Guttenberg. What's that guy's name?
Jeff Goldblum.
Jeff Goldblum. That's right. I get always those two confused. Anyway, so here I am. I see they got a huge sign on the outside of the building, Sully's gym, boxing, this and that. And on the bottom said pro wrestling. I'm like, oh, I guess I'm at the right place. So I walk up the 3 flights of these sketchy stairs in this old warehouse and find this warehouse. There's all warehouse rooms up there. And, I go in there and there's Sweet Daddy Siki. The funny thing is, I recognized him. I never saw him wrestle up until, years later. But I did recognize him because I used to box a little bit at the old Sully's gym down on Ossington. And I remember seeing this, huge black guy with blonde hair wearing a purse, in the 80s. It's like, well, what is this? Right?
Yeah.
and the guys in the class, the boxing, oh, that's Sweet Daddy Siki. He's a wrestler. I go, I've never heard of this guy in my life. He's not a wrestler. You're just some freak off Queen Street or something. Anyway, so I'm like, oh, this is the guy I'm thinking. He didn't look much different than he did 10, 15 years ago when I was, in grade school. By now I'm out of high school, right? I started late. I started when I was about 24, 25. So anyway, they give me they sit me down and they ask me a whole bunch of questions like, why do I want to be a wrestler and this and that, and and I guess they took a liking to him and Ron Hutcherson, right, were there, and they said, okay, I guess I could start, and I think they told me to start in a week or 2, and that was it. Right? They told me how much it costs and what we have to do there and how long it's going to take. And that was that. I was off to the races. And for the first 6 months, it was a living hell training there.
Yeah.
Really, eh?
The ring was built into the corner of the gym, into the 2 walls. And, so that was the 2 corners there, or 3 corners, I should say. And they connected to a huge beam that was in the middle of the room, and they just strapped ropes in between, and that was it.
Wow.
Right? It wasn't a ring. It was just something they made out of wood and carpet underneath that resembled a ring.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like the stiffest thing you ever saw. And the first fall I ever did, I think I just almost blacked out. It was horrible.
Yeah.
Wow.
At least for the first 6 months, it was just constant pain. And we only trained on the weekends for 2 hours, Saturday and Sunday at 10 o'clock, 10 to 12. And so, yeah, for the first 6 months, I was coming home every day, every weekend, I should say. Elbows all bruised, knees all bruised, sore, always sore.
Yeah.
From bumps. And after 6 months, I'm asking the other guys, I'm like, am I doing something wrong? I'm in pain all the time. I'm like, no, it's just this ring. You'll get used to it. And they always told us, if you can bump in this ring, you can bump in any ring in the world. And I'm like, okay. The only other ring just as stiff as that are some of the training rings out in Mexico. Same thing, stiff concrete. And that was it, and that's how I started.
Do you remember when you got the green light to work in a match?
Yeah, it took about a year and a half after I started training, right? We did, Ron would do this show every year at Monarch Park in the Danforth area in Toronto. If you're from Toronto.
Yeah, I know where Monarch Park is. That delivered packages up there.
Right. I found out later because Ron just lives down the street from there. That's probably why he did it. Of all places, right? I'm like, why are we here? I don't even know a deal where I was. I'm from the west end of Toronto. This is totally the east end. I've never been to there. I'm like, where am I? Anyway, so yeah, I debuted there because we had an odd number of guys in the gym. So I was in a tag match. It was 3-on-2. It was, who was it? It was me, this other kid named Shane. I can't remember the other third guy against, I can't remember what he was calling himself. I think he was calling himself Joe Sampson at the time, which ended up being Joe Legend, and another kid named Adam Impact Copeland at the time.
Well, he wasn't Sexton back then?
No, gosh, no. He was only like 17 years old. I don't think he was going to be calling himself Sexton. Anyway.
Skinny kid, right?
What's that?
Skinny kid.
Yeah, and that was our first match. Yeah, out there in some park in Scarborough, Danforth, sorry, in front of, I don't know, 50 people, 100 people tops, I guess. That was it. That was the first match.
Did your perspective of the wrestling business change when you started to train, like of the wrestlers, of the promoters, or how anything worked?
Well, honestly, back then you didn't know anything. Like, okay, I saw obviously the 2020 episode with John Stossel, getting slapped around, and
we just talked about that.
I knew of what goes
and everything.
Yeah, I knew about that, right? And but I had no idea. I assumed in my mind if you're a good wrestler, if you're athletic, you look good and you can move around in the ring, that boom, automatically everything will be great. Yeah. I had no idea there was way more to it than that, right? Obviously, you need to know the right people. You need to be in the right spots. You have to politic. You have to backstab. You gotta, do whatever it takes to make it. And I thought for sure everybody in the wrestling business made money, tons of money.
Yes.
I thought, man, that's it. As soon as you start wrestling, boom, the money's gonna come rolling in. Yeah, right. Right. So yeah, like I knew about how the business worked in a sense of what we do in the ring and stuff like that. Obviously, not to the extent of like all the pain and suffering that goes into the training. Obviously, you didn't know that, but because I wouldn't say I was super athletic, but I was very. I picked up fairly quick, right? I was like a pretty good to average athlete myself, right? And I remember when I decided to get into wrestling, a year before I actually wanted to like look for a gym, I tried to hit the gym as much as I put as much weight on as I could. I think I got up to about 190, 195 pounds just from working out and eating a lot. So, but I had no idea, like I said before, what it takes to actually make it in the wrestling business and how far you can go. I just thought if you're good, if you train hard, you look good, it's a no-brainer, right? I thought it was like hockey and football. If you're good, you're going to get drafted, right?
Yep.
It's not quite the same in wrestling.
No. So when you started traveling, not necessarily traveling around, but by being promoted by Ron or whatever he was doing at the time.
He paused.
Hey, who were some of the names that there were, like you've obviously mentioned, Joe Legend and Adam Copeland, right?
So our little group, that we trained together for about a year and a half together. There was about, I want to say, 5 to 6 of us always together, right? Because we're out of the same gym, we're out of the same class. So back then there was no no real promotions per se. They're just like what we call now spot shows.
Yeah.
This guy's promoting a show in St. Catharines, and Ron say, oh, this guy wants you guys out there. Okay, give us the address. We'll drive out there and do the show. Big Mac is running a show in Dunnville. Go out there and do that show. Okay. So it was us. It was, what, they would call us, I guess they would call us, the Sully boys, the guys from Sully's. And so we would go together usually in some kind of fashion. It was either 3 of us or 4 of us or whatever combination they wanted. And we would just literally do all these Ontario spot shows wherever we were kind of needed. And back then, I couldn't tell you how, usually they would call Joe Legend for some reason, on the phone. And Joe would call the rest of us, hey, we got a show next week. Great. Okay, I'll pick you up or you pick me up, blah, blah, blah. And that's how it was back then, right? And back then we would basically work ourselves in some kind of different combinations, right? Because back then, the guys on these shows were from a different era, from the era before us. Yeah. 70s and like the mid to early 80s, right? Guys like, for instance, we would see a lot of was Jumping Jay Sterling, The Missing Link, Ricky Johnson, Steve Oceanside was on a few shows with us. Hurricane Hugo was another local guy. Mad Dog Rex, I believe. Yep. Right? Just local guys that used to work the territory. Hold on, my phone's going off, dang it. So, we would be on shows with those guys, but we would, because we're the young guys, they'd put us on first, right? Stuff like that. And a TNT was another guy that would be on these shows, Jetstar, that whole almost last crew of Bearman guys. Okay, yeah. Dave McKinley Bearman guys, mostly. And a couple other the young local guys too that were from another gym. Back then, as far as I know, when I trained, there was only 1 to 2 other gyms that were running then. There was a gym on Dundas called Max Gym that a few guys would come out of. Who ran that one? Phil Watson, I believe, was training guys too. I don't know where his gym was located. And obviously Dewey Roberts and Jason Sterling had their gym in Hamilton where you would get some Hamilton guys on shows too. So as far as I know, those were only 3 to 4 different gyms. But Sully's, I think, had the reputation at that time of producing some pretty good talent. Yeah, and they were known anyways for years and years and years as giving out boxing guys, right? So they had a reputation anyways for giving out or making solid entertainers, right? Oh, definitely, yeah. Any interesting places you worked in Ontario when you were starting out, or just regular? We would do all kinds of stuff. We would do a lot of bar shows for Ricky Johnson, and like the worst bars you can imagine. Okay. Well, now they're multi-million-dollar bars and hotels. Back then, they were Queen Street, King Street dives. Yeah. With hotel rooms on top. Where I remember one time we were all sitting up in the second floor. They gave us hotel rooms. I would say just rooms. Yeah. And as we're changing, and stuff like that, the hookers are bringing the Johns right by us into the rooms right next to us, to do business, obviously. We're like, what's on here, right? It's just nothing's ever happened. These girls are coming in and out with these guys, and these guys are looking at us. We're getting changed into our outfits. It's like, well, I can imagine what they were thinking. Yeah. That was the one bar we did a lot was Bronco Billy's, I believe it was called at the time. Now it's called the Drake, I believe, or something. It's like a $3 million renovated place. But that's the hotel that George Chuvalo's 2 sons OD'd and died in. That was their claim to fame back then, if you can believe it. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, see his face just freaking out. Yeah, so that was a pretty interesting place to work. And then we would work all kinds of things like tomato festivals in Dunnville. We would do fairs out in the middle of nowhere. I don't know how we ever made it to these places. Joe usually drove, and he always found these places on a map somewhere.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know. You know what I mean? I was oblivious of where I was, right? And so yeah, we would go almost anywhere to work. But those bar shows are pretty fun. They're like the worst bars you can imagine. And
Do you imagine any, like,
the
remember
clientele
any
was
hecklers?
just as interesting as the wrestler, as the clientele there.
Do you remember any hecklers and stuff like that? Like, the super fans, like there's super fans on the indie scene right now, right? So
People didn't really, well, like I said, we did a lot of bar shows, and people were like watching us and drinking beer and, talking to the
Smoking
girl next door,
cigarettes.
right next to them, or, it'd be, it was a strange way to, and we, because we were young, we weren't even focused on the audience. We were just like, hey, let's do this.
Do your thing, yeah.
You know what I mean? We're just doing our thing. And the funny thing is about doing these local shows, because, whoever's promoting the show, whether it be Big Mac, Ricky Johnson, or Phil Watson. We worked for Phil Watson a few times. I think maybe at least once for sure. Once they saw us work the opening match, they'd come back. Hey, can you come out and work this guy in this match? And one time I worked 3 times on a Ricky Johnson show. I opened up the show with Joe, and then I got thrown into another match with TNT, and then I was in the main event in a 3-man tag. I'm like, how much am I making?
Yeah.
The funny thing is, back then we actually be owing the promoter money, because back then we had to buy $75 licenses.
Yes.
Every year, and the scam was usually, I'll give you $40, but I'll pay for your license for the show and this and that. I'm like, okay, you know what I mean? Like, so you're kind of losing money, but you know what? We did it. We loved it, right? I didn't care. I worked 3 times. I didn't. I would win the first match, lose the second one, and then be in the main event. I was like, what am I doing here? They just, I mean, and, I don't want to say they took advantage of us, because they knew we were young, we would do anything. And, after a while, we're like, hey, why are these guys just sitting around drinking beer while we're out here 3 or 4 times?
Yeah.
But we didn't care. We still did it, right? We just wanted the experience, right?
Rob, when was it you were first notified about
What's that?
WWE?
Sorry, say again?
When were you first notified about the dark matches in WWF that you did?
Okay, funny story.
Because you did one with Owen Hart and I think Al Snow. I saw.
Yeah. That was a little later, but we were working in Ajax for local wrestler promoter Bill Scullion. And same thing, we would go out there and do our match, and then we'd come back later for he had of all things, a battle royal cage match.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. and I guess it was the opposite, right, of a battle royal. You had to get out of the cage to not lose.
Okay.
The last person in would lose. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right? But anyway, so like I said, so we did that show. We went on to the next show. About a week, 2 weeks later, I get a phone call at home from a guy saying he was just appointed the F president of Canada. And I'm like, okay. I didn't even think, like, how'd you get my number? Like, you know what I mean? Back then, you have to, anyway. And I'm like, okay, sure. What am I going to say, right? And he was like, I want to see you guys down in my office next week. Us guys, meaning, me, Joe, Adam, and whoever else
The
is
Sully boys.
Yeah, Sully boys, right? I'm like, okay. So he gave me the address. We all, I guess we all got the call.
Yep.
How? And we all converted, and we went to this guy's office. This guy ended up being, he was right. He was Carl DeMarco.
Yeah.
Just appointed a couple weeks before that. He was at the Ajax show, and he saw us, and he thought we were great, I guess, but we were so green at the time. When we watched the videos, we was like, whoa, I can't believe I just did that, or
Yeah.
doing that. But anyway, he seemed to love us. And he said, I'm going to get you guys on TV. I'm going to get you guys to do this and that. We're like looking at each other. Okay, yeah, whatever, buddy. And then, we kept in touch, and
Well, you cut out.
Yeah, what happened there?
Oh, Jesse muted you by accident.
No, I don't know what happened. My computer froze there for a minute.
How about now?
No,
There we go. Okay.
All right, sorry. Where did I leave off? So anyway, we leave his office. You know, we send him videos and whatnot. We don't hear nothing for a little while, and then once again I get a phone call at home. I don't even think I had a cell phone at the time. It was Carl saying, "Hey, I need you to pack your bag and meet me at the airport." I'm like, "For what?" "Oh, I'm gonna fly you out to Halifax, and you're gonna wrestle Hakushi on a house show." He's like, I'm like, "Okay." He goes, "Yeah, the 1-2-3 kid broke his thumb, and you're gonna replace him." So I'm like, "Okay." So I leave my job, I run home, get my stuff ready, head out to the airport, and there's Carl, with Sean Waldman, the 1-2-3 kid, and we had some time before the plane left, so we're just eating there and stuff like that, and he's filling me in on what to do and what's going to happen. So me and Sean Waldman, we fly out to Halifax, and I think we get there the day of the show, a few hours before. We go directly to the arena. I get suited up, and I go out and have a match at I assume it was the Halifax Forum, I believe.
Yeah.
And I had a match with Hakushi, right? It was a house show. And, I'm there, I am sitting in the locker room with, like, Bret Hart, Lex Luger, whatchamacallit, just about, everybody that was there.
Like imagine?
Yeah.
Nice.
And Pierre Carbolet was there. And, just everybody, top guys are there, right? And that was it. That's how I started. And after that, Carl would hook us up with back then they would do what they would call TVs, right? So they would fly us out for 3-4 days on a loop of TV spots, right? From town to town. And so that's where Jesse mentioned the next time around I got to wrestle Owen Hart. This was for TV. This was for Superstars, I believe. And I had a match with Owen Hart for TV. And same thing, like one day you're in a bar, wrestling, TNT or Mad Dog Rex or whoever, and then the next day you're, in a locker room with Bret Hart, Lex Luger, you name it.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, oh, here I am. That's it. And then and then after that it was, we mostly did Canadian shots. Me and Joe actually did a few Detroit. We did the Joe Louis Arena. We did some shows there, TV matches, dark matches, whatnot. Yeah, Buffalo. They sent us to Buffalo, so that was pretty cool.
That's pretty wild.
And I think the main reason was because obviously Carl liked us, and once you get back then anyway, once you got your foot in the door, you did a TV or you did a dark match, whoever was booking then I want to say enhancement talent is what they called them then. Once you got to know the guy who would book them, then they would call you every time they're in the area.
Okay.
With either they liked you or you showed up, right? So once you got in your foot in the door, then you're just a regular for the most part.
Yeah, I think I heard on JR's podcast that that was one of the shows that he signed Edge and Christian or something like that, because they signed him super cheap a week. He's like $250 a week or something like that.
Well, no, they would pay you really well for the TVs and dark matches. They pay you $250 for the match. Even if you didn't wrestle, you would get paid.
Okay.
They would usually pick up if you needed a rental car, if they flew you out somewhere, they would pay for the flight, obviously. And if you need a rental car, 4 or 5 of the enhancement guys would share the van and stuff like that, and they would pick up the cost, and they'd also pick up the cost of the hotel. So the enhancement guys actually were doing pretty good in a sense than the contract guys, because the contract guys had to usually pay for their rental cars and hotel rooms.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
right? And they would still get $250. That was their basically their show up money, right? Their walking around money.
Yeah, but the contract guys, they can write it off like a tax, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what they would do. But they would also share the cars, and because
Oh yeah, I heard stories of Owen Hart and Mick Foley.
Oh yeah. Oh, that was true. Yeah. Those guys had a friend or a buddy in every town to pick them up at the airport, take them to the show, and they'd bunk with them for the night.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Go ahead, Jesse.
This is interesting. So you did some time in TNA.
Yeah, just a couple shots there.
Yeah. So I just wanted to know, were you there during the Jeff Jarrett times or the transition to Dixie Carter?
No, that would be both time was Jeff Jarrett.
Okay.
First time, I think we went to, I want to say it was Memphis, when they had the little studio show, little barn show. It looked like a barn from the outside, but inside it was just like a little place. And then the second time I went was when they were at Universal Studios. Mm-hmm. So they're no longer in Memphis. They were down in Florida.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like I said, when I got called, when I did those spots, I was sort of, I don't want to say I was out of wrestling, but I had taken a break from wrestling. I had gone back to school, and I'd opened up my wrestling gym. So I was more focused on, training, right? Yeah. And I got those shots. I don't want to say by fluke. I got them through another friend, Scott Demore, who was working with them a little bit. Just, I don't know, just he said, hey, you want to go to TNA? I'm like, okay. Right? You know what I mean? So, but I didn't try to, when I was down there, I really wasn't trying to get a job with them. I was just sort of went there just for the sake of going there, Mm-hmm. I didn't try to talk to Jeff or nothing like that after. Joe did. Joe definitely, when he went, he wanted to get a job there, right? Because he had just been released by WWF at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they were fun. Like, there was a lot of talent down there, you know what I mean? Actually, the first match I did with TNA, I think everybody on that match I was in debuted that show. I teamed up with, oh gosh, I forgot his name now, but we faced Sanjay Dutt and Eric Young.
Okay.
Well, Eric Young's another Canadian.
We had a nice little tag team match, 6-minute tag team match, if you can believe it, 6-7 minutes tops. And yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed it. But like I said, I really wasn't in the position to try and get a full-time wrestling job at the time. But TNA wasn't full-time, technically. It was once a week, every Wednesday, I believe. They aired the pay-per-views. And it was basically like a very high-budget indie show at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No contracts, per se. It was just like you show up, you get paid. You know what I mean? That's it, right?
Yeah.
It's not like you could make a living the early TNA days, right?
You brought up training. That's where we wanted to go next.
Sure.
When did you start training and opening your gym?
So opened up the gym, I believe, in about 2001. And it started very simply. We just started inside a karate studio. Just so we put the ring in the corner, and I didn't really, at the time, like I said, I had put wrestling on the back burner a bit. I just finished college, and so I was working, and I was still doing the odd wrestling shows here and there, and so we opened up the gym, and that was around the time that Ron Hutchison's gym shut down. So a few of the girls he had came over to me, Tracy Brooks and Gail Kim, to be specific. Later on, Angel Williams joined us. She's Angelina Love.
Yeah.
And so, they came because they still were training and they hadn't made it just yet, right? And so when we made the gym, so we had some talent. And we started up another little wrestling crew of going to shows together, right? So we would go down to Windsor and work for Scott D'Amore. We'd go here, there. We'd go into the States sometimes, Detroit, to work for Ed Farhat Jr. there.
Okay.
For him, yeah. So yeah, and it just took off from there. Really, we ended up leaving the karate studio. Like we were only there 8 months, and we found another unit, well, an old factory, really. We actually found that place by fluke because we were like, we made a small independent movie. And the guy who produced the movie was co-owners with some other guys who owned this big factory that they would rent out for movies and stuff. So we moved into there. If you want to watch the movie, the movie is Enter the Zombie King.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an awesome movie.
Okay.
It's like a comic book, / wrestling movie, if you're into that kind of stuff. And so it just took off from there, right? And then, like I said, there's no other wrestling schools in the city at the time, and just word of mouth and just website exposure. We just started getting bigger and bigger, and we made another move after we left there, and so I had the wrestling gym for about 13 years.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it was profitable enough to keep it going that long?
Well, it's not that it was profitable. Just like any business, right? There was ups and downs. There was high times and low times. There was a lot of students. Sometimes there would be no students, you know what I mean? Depending on the economy and whatever was happening right at the time, right? But I never did it. I never started the wrestling gym for money. I just enjoyed the training and working with the young kids. And we produce a lot of very good local wrestlers. And then
You trained Michael Elgin.
That's right.
I went to high school. That's why I know
that. Is that right? Yeah, he trained with us. A lot of good guys came out of there that are actually, some of them are still wrestling today, to be honest with you.
Cool.
That's friggin' wild, man.
So
and people got to realize, I always talk about this with Wes, when you had stuff back then, there was no social media, no MySpace. You know what I mean? The internet wasn't as...
No, it was just starting. Like I said, we just had a web page with like one page kind of thing, no videos or nothing like that, just the general information.
Yep.
And we were lucky, right? Being the only wrestling gym in the city, Toronto, basically the biggest city in Canada. If you really, we would get a lot of exposure on TV. Like we would get like breakfast television coming down. We would always be like in the wrestling articles in the paper. Right. Now Magazine would sometimes do an article on us. Right. So we had a lot of exposure that way. And so that helped. And and the funny thing is, after we did that first independent movie, we got a lot of TV and little things we would do in TV, like commercials and stuff like that. People would call me up, say, hey, I'm looking for wrestlers. Do you have this type of person? And, we would, produce, for commercials, for TV shows, we would send wrestlers. Guys that I thought would fit the part. So we did really well in that sense because we got a lot of exposure for an independent wrestling gym, right? Mm-hmm. Toronto is the place to be, I guess, if you want to have a wrestling gym for sure.
Any of your previous students now run a wrestling gym in Toronto or anything like that?
Let me think. I know a bunch of my later students have a little gym out, I want to say in the Stouffville area. But they're all over the place. They're all doing all kinds of stuff. Another one of my original students is working out of an MMA gym called The Forge in Mississauga. He does some classes there. And they're just everywhere, which is good. They're doing their own thing, right? Yeah. Yeah.
You're still heavily involved in the Ontario wrestling scene. With your ring rentals and Demand Lucha, which is doing another big Ontario run. Yeah. You guys just did Mississauga on the weekend.
Yeah.
Your crew's been to Greektown Wrestling as well, which I've attended many times.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about your involvement in the indies and the ring rentals, Demand Lucha, and all that?
Okay. Yeah. Well, we've always done ring rentals for a long time, just because people needed a ring for a show, they'd call me up and say, hey, can you deliver a ring? I'm like, okay, sure. So that was always a side kind of hustle we would do just to make extra money. But a few years after we opened up the gym, we got involved with a local DJ named Dave Blizzard, who was on Z103. And he came up with this show idea where he was going to involve live bands with wrestling. He was going to call it Blood, Sweat, and Ears.
Okay.
Not tears, ears.
Yeah.
Right. So our first show, well, his first show, I told him, I'm not interested in running a promotion or doing that. It's a lot of work, right? If you want, I'll rent you the ring. I'll find you the wrestlers, right? They're mostly my students and some outside students, right? And I got him the contact for Rhino, who Terry Richards is his real name. He used to wrestle with us out in Winnipeg and for Tony Condello. That's where I first met him. So, and so their first show was in Georgetown at some cowboy bar. What's it called now? Can't remember right now. It might come to me. So we did a show up there, and all of 76 people showed up.
Okay.
Total bust, right? I think Rhino's payoff was a few $1,000. So like, oh my God, you guys lost money. So, but like I said, I wasn't involved with the show at that point. I'm like, okay, So Dave came to us, him and his partner Tom, and said, hey, I know we didn't do well. I think we can, the show was great. The wrestling was phenomenal. It's too bad only 76 people saw it, right? Which to today's standards is a pretty good crowd.
That's right.
Right? But back then it wasn't, right? And so I said, okay, I'll try and work with you for the next couple. So we ran another 2 times there at this cowboy bar in Georgetown. And by the 3rd show, we had basically triple the attendance, right? We're up to 250, 300 people.
Okay.
Perfect.
Which is pretty good, right? And we were also using independent talent, but top independent, guys we would bring in guys like Petey Williams, Sabin, Christopher Daniels.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Okay. Yeah.
Back then they were very affordable, right?
But before the AEW kick.
What's that?
Well, Christopher Daniels in AEW now, right?
Yeah, well, now he is. Yeah, but back then he was an independent guy working just about everywhere, right? And he was well known. And then we took off from there. And then, eventually BSE was I would say the #1 promotion in Ontario. And then we got the chance to go work up in a show up in Timmins. And we drew 1,500 people.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
In Timmins. Yeah, it was it's got to be a record to this day, that independent promotion, right? And that is the first time wrestling had been in Timmins in 15 years. I think the last time, it was up there, international wrestling was running up there, right?
Yeah, probably the Wildmen
Timmins
up there.
Yeah, Timmins was a big town. They used to run, Andre the Giant, Hulk Hogan used to wrestle there.
That's right, out of Montreal.
They had some huge shows up there at one time, but it was stagnant for the last 15 years until we went up there and just, 1,500 people. We were back 3 months later with another show and drew another 1,300 people there, right? And we had Christian Cage on that one that drew that much. The first show was a bit of a hot mess. We had Tommy Dreamer booked on it, Chris Canyon, Mortis, right? Both those guys, well, Tommy Dreamer ended up canceling. Chris Canyon never showed up, right? So at the last minute, we had to scramble and book. We ended up booking Monty Brown and Eric Young, right?
Okay.
But no one cared. You know what I mean? We showed up there, and people, like I said, 1,500 people, 15 showed up, and it was and after that, we did all these northern towns. We would do North Bay, we would do Sudbury, we went up as far as even Kapuskasing, right? We did all the northern towns and did really well up there. We did Kirkland Lake, another 1,200 people there.
Wow.
Yeah. And like I said, but then, and then obviously in 2008, 7, 8, the economy went, right, went down, and basically nobody was doing shows. Nobody was doing anything anymore. So that kind of was the end of BSE per se. And we just sort of came back to the city and did like just smaller local shows for a few years after that. I don't know what we were talking about before. I think I went out on a tangent there for a minute.
No, that's
all good.
Yeah.
Demand Lucha is coming to Oshawa. You guys are going to Kitchener?
We got in next week we're in Kitchener. Where they teamed up with we did it a few years ago. It's an expo. It's a tequila expo.
Yeah, that's right. I know that.
Yeah, we did it 2.5 years ago before the pandemic. And we did about 3 or 4 shows for them. We did London. We did what did we do? I think we did Oshawa too. And great show. It's just basically a big arena show. And they have tequila vendors. It's just basically a big tequila expo where different tequila companies come and sell, and there's food, and obviously it's a Mexican kind of style theme. And so we have wrestling, and people love it. Tequila and wrestling go really well together. They're fun shows to do. All right.
Go ahead, Wes.
What do you think of the independent scene in Ontario now?
It's good. The only complaint I have about it is, I don't want to say it's a complaint per se, but what we're trying to do at Demand Lucha is produce a product that you can't see anywhere else.
Okay.
With our characters, with our wrestlers, right? They may be, they might have a different name in another show, another promotion, but when we use them, we try to make them our own kind of thing, right? I think what's lacking a little bit in the independent local scene is it's usually the same bunch of guys on every show. Does that make sense? Which is not bad for them. The Slicks. It's great for them, but when you can see the same guys in Hamilton as the same guys you can see in Oshawa, you're not going to get a lot of people traveling around.
No, not at all.
People are just going to stay put. It's going to come to Oshawa next week. I'm going to just sit here and watch it here. I'm not going to go to, St. Catharines and watch this show there or Niagara Falls or, wherever, because it's usually the same batch of guys or a combination of guys, right? Rarely do you see one show that has their own little thing going on with their own little talent. Like I said, they may have different names and different gimmicks in other promotions, but we try to, in Demand Lucha, try to have, our own thing, our own product. Just like I did, we had BSE. Majority of the wrestlers on the BSE shows that we did were my wrestlers, were my students, and specifically give them gimmicks or names, to use in our show. And the funny thing is, we started doing shows not because I wanted to do shows, it's because my wrestlers, my students, couldn't get booked anywhere else. Right? So I felt bad. I'm like, oh, these kids can't get booked. So we started doing our own local little shows before BSE even. And sure enough, it picked up as soon as we got to BSE. And then all of a sudden, after a year of BSE doing really well, all of a sudden all these other promotions start, hey, can you come here? Can you come there? Right? You see how it works? It's like Jesse said, it's a bit cliquey, each promotion. They want to use their own guys, which is fine. They sometimes are afraid to use outside talent.
I find that everywhere in Ontario.
Yeah.
In Oshawa, Pro Wrestling Eclipse, they use the same guys every month.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's because they have an agreement with them or they just like them, but they're kind of afraid to, and that's the big complaint I get of a lot of the independent wrestlers now. And saying, oh my God, I can't get booked here. I can't get booked anywhere. I can only, do this one show here once a month. And I'm like, well, I don't know. That's what I hope. That's the one thing I was saying that bothers me about promotions is they don't try to use different people. They sort of like Jesse said, it's always the same batch of guys. And after a while, it's going to get a little stale, I think. And that's why you see the drop in audiences at some of these shows. And the only time they can pick up the audience is to bring in a name.
Yeah.
Or an old Fed name.
Yeah.
Or, an old TNA name.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the big the big problem, I think, in Ontario indie.
So,
any big standouts
What's
in
that?
your mind? Any big standouts, like people that you're like, oh, this kid's got it?
You know what? I never try to predict that. If I like them, that's one thing, right? I always tell guys, I go, it doesn't matter what I think of your wrestling. It matters who's hiring matters with their opinion. If, the Fed likes you, then that's great. If AEW likes you, that's great, right? That's the one thing a lot of kids ask me, what do you think? What do you think of this? And I go, well, I can only give you my opinion of what you did out there and what I like. Just because I like what you did doesn't mean another agent, promoter is going to like what you did, right? I go, it's up to that person that they like you. But standouts, there's a lot of good guys in the area, a lot of good guys. But the one, I would say, one of the main standouts, I think, is not only because he's a pretty good wrestler, he has a good look and everything, but he's out there, he's all over the place. He's working in Montreal, he's working in the Maritimes. He went over to Japan a few years ago. Is Channing Decker, right?
Yeah, I know who he is.
I'm not
Because
just-
of Greektown Wrestling.
Yeah, and I'm not just saying that because he's a student of mine, but because he's everywhere. He's trying to do it, and it's hard, right? Because there's not a lot of money out there to do it full time.
He's huge in Quebec right now too.
Yeah, like I said, he does all the local promotions there. He's out in the Maritimes. Every time I go on Facebook, I see him. He's in here, he's there, and I'm like, wow. And a lot of guys say, oh, how do I make it? I go, well, you got to do what this guy's doing. Just got to get out there.
Yeah.
And he's in Dark Side of the Ring now too.
Yeah, that was a big thing for him. Yeah, he's in a lot of those episodes. He's doing really well. I can see him really, getting somewhere someday. If he keeps
His match with Sabu was insane.
Yeah, I gotta admit, I was there for that, and it's probably one of the best hardcore matches, I'm throwing quotations up, that I've seen in a long time. Yeah.
It's crazy to see Sabu and then hear comparisons to the Chic, because now when I look at the Chic, all I see is Sabu.
Yeah, they've kind of morphed into the two things, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They did.
Rob,
Yes.
now we have to come to the time where we talk about something you and Wes have in common.
What's that?
The Bear Man. You're
Yes.
currently doing a documentary. I just want to know.
Am I? I'm not sure. Am I?
Well, that's what Wes told me.
That's what I told you.
I don't say too much about it because it's not my business.
Yeah.
So,
Well, what I can say is, I kind of have to give props to this pandemic, because I was home for a while, not working, and I was always fascinated with the Bear Man story. I saw his show when I was in high school. I saw one show at Downsview Arena, and I think that must have been the first time I even was aware of the Bear Man, because I remember seeing the little ad in the Saturday Sun, for his show in Downsview. And I didn't live too far from there. I'm like, oh, God, wrestling. And I was regular at the Maple Leaf Gardens at the time. And then, but I'm like, oh, another show. Great. You know what I mean? So I remember going up to Downsview there with my little brother, and I saw, in the ad, had pictures of the Chic, and obviously I knew about the Chic. I never saw him live, right? And just that little clipping in the Saturday Sun, with the faces and the cage and the blood, and I'm like, whoa, this looks like a disaster. I gotta see this, right? It was totally different from what you saw at the Maple Leaf Gardens, the guys with the nice faces and bodies and stuff like that. I go, so anyway, go out there, Downsview Arena, this small little arena, is a place you'd go ice skating, in the winter. The ring, a little ragtag ring in the middle of the arena with a bunch of chairs, and I'm like, whoa, where am I? Right? It's totally different from Maple Leaf Gardens. And then, and when the show starts, you got the Chic, just, bleeding everywhere. You got, not only were the wrestlers, just strange looking to me, the audience members are just as crazy. And then the big cage match with Wildman and Chris Cole is like, what is going on? This is violent.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This is like over the top, right? And I remember there's a lot of blood on that show, right? And I'm like, I've never seen so much blood in my life. You get to see it sometimes at Maple Leaf Gardens every now and then, right? But not like this. And this is even before I even started wrestling. Like I said, I was still in high school when I saw that show. And then when I got back when I did get into wrestling, I always kept hearing about this book called Drawing Heat. You got to get this book. You got to read this book. It's got everything you need to know about wrestling, blah, blah, blah. And obviously, I couldn't find it at the time because it came out in 1988. And I think now, we're in the 90s. And I always kept hearing stories. Sweet Daddy CQ would always tell us stories about the Bear Man and the bear and this and that. And he'd tell us a few stories. I'd hear stories from the older guys, like I said, on the Ricky Johnson shows about the Bear Man. And then eventually I got my hands on the book. I remember it was on eBay. And it cost me like $100.
Wonder if you bought it for me.
Yeah, maybe.
I sold a bunch of copies on eBay. Yeah.
Okay. I got, what? There's some handwriting in the back of the book, so I'm gonna see if it's actually signed by somebody. And I read it, and I'm like, whoa, this is a very good book. This is like a movie, like it's just somebody would write a fiction movie about the bear and killing his fiance, and then all the stories on the road. So anyway, this is a long answer, but anyway, I'm always fascinated with the story of the Bear Man. And then when the pandemic hit, I started doing some YouTube research on the Bear Man, see what's out there. I go, there's not much out there. And I reread the book, and I got a hold of my friend Jay Nadler, who is also involved with Demand Lucha. He's the ring announcer, commentator, film guy, editor, everything. And I said, look, I got this idea. I want to sort of try and, just do a little documentary on this guy from what what we can figure out. And that's what I found. Prior to that, I found Wes's Facebook page, and I joined in. I was using it for research. And then I reached out to Wes. Wes was the first guy I interviewed. We went, me and Jay, we went to Cambridge and met up with Wes, nice enough to meet with us. And he basically laid it all out, from start to finish, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, that's a lot. I'm thinking, okay, that's all I need. But then, you know what? And then I started looking at other people, finding other people to interview, and it just sort of snowballed from there. All of a sudden, everybody wanted to talk about the Bear Man, right? And so I did a bunch of interviews. I interviewed guys like Tim Gerard. I even interviewed Jim Friedman, who was the author of Drawn Heat. Yeah. I somehow found him, right? And
That's cool.
He actually called me back, and we talked, and I met with him in London and sat down with him and talked. And the more I talked to these different guys, the more information I would get and more leads to other guys and other things, right? I talked to a couple ladies at the orphanage that Dave grew up in, right? I just found out.
Wow.
I just found out it's like 10 minutes from my house. I live in Maple. It's in Richmond Hill, 10 minutes away. That led me to some other guys. And then, I kept snowballing, right? And I do have some more interviews lined up. I'm not going to say too much about it because they're going to be really interesting. But yeah, and so we've accumulated hours and hours and hours of interviews with different people. And hopefully we can put it together this year, or at least a highlight reel or a teaser video, and go from there and see. And I have a friend who's a movie producer, distributor that's going to probably help us with that. So hopefully we get something to show you guys by the end of this year. I put out a little teaser video earlier last week that me and my 13-year-old son put together. well put together. I found all these clips and pictures, and I sent it to him, and he edited it for me on his cell phone, of all things.
Yeah, right.
That's so fantastic, and the comments we've gotten from it have been fantastic. It's a dream come true, that is for sure. Especially like the real hardcore fans, or the people who actually knew Dave better than I ever did, because I met him a couple times, but that was it. Hey, nice to see you, wild man. And yeah, whatever, right? And so yeah, some of these people who really knew him, like Carrie and some other people, they just loved it. It was a great job. And
that's the thing. A lot of these people I interviewed, no one has ever talked to them about Dave or the show. They've sort of almost been forgotten. And I don't know. Like I said, it just snowballed for me. Like Carrie Ann Orser, I found her, right, with her name, and I tracked her down.
Yep.
Somehow I got her, and she was so surprised to hear, like, oh, okay, and, talked to her, and we talked to even Adrian Adonis's youngest daughter, Gina Banton, right? We talked to her. Same thing. She says no one has ever reached out to us to talk about Adrian Adonis.
Mm-hmm.
It's just really strange, right?
Did you try Angie?
What's that?
Did you try his other daughter, Angie?
I haven't talked to her, but I do have her on Facebook. I think we've chatted a little bit.
Yeah.
Hopefully, yeah. But I'd rather do in-person interviews as opposed to Skype interviews, right? Just for quality purposes. But I'm sure we'll get eventually talk to her. But like I said, I got a couple other interviews lined up that I think is just going to blow some people away.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you on the book part, because I got drawing heat from Greg Oliver.
Yeah.
I bought a copy of him. And when I read it, I was like amazed.
Mm-hmm.
Because Greg's like, dude, it's a fiction book, but the characters are real people.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, okay. So like Ma Pickles is actually a real hardcore old lady fan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? Like, and I always wondered, like, I'm like, man, this could be a Netflix series. It could be a show.
Oh, it could be.
And I love Wrestling Bears because it amazes me, because I grew up, in grade 8. It was 9/11 in grade 8.
Yeah.
For me, right? So I remember watching that go down in the library. So for me, I grew up in post 9/11 era where you can't bring a bear across the border.
Yeah.
Right? And like, especially nowadays, like with
right?
people wanting to train the bullpen in MLB, they want to change the name. Like, there's no way. Mm-hmm. And like Truffy Truesdale wrestling alligators and stuff. Like, I love that kind of stuff. It's just, it would never happen.
No, unless you're in Russia or something.
Yeah. The lure of the book, because I was friends with Terry Dart before the book even came out, but I knew about the book being produced, and I had a sample copy of a few chapters that Terry had lent me that Jim had given to him, and I was blown away, because even though I wasn't an inside fan back then, but I was pretty close. I mean, we read in the sheets, we knew what was going on, but to read that book, and I always took it as the gospel. The words in there were the gospel, and I still do to a certain extent, but also on the same note, I've also read the book like 40,000 times, and every time I open it up to a page, I get something else, like a feeling or something, and that's why I decided to start the Wildman tribute page on Facebook, and then someone gave me an idea, like, hey, you should write a story about a poster, and then another one, and another one, and another one, and it's hard. I don't have any education. I can't write a book, but I'm doing the best I can, and it's so hard, but it's so going to be so fulfilling because of what I'm going to put into it is partly truth and partly fiction. So it's going to be more like what Jesse or Greg told you, Jesse. It's a fiction story but the characters were real, which I don't believe.
And the funny thing,
but you have no credibility because you hate Hulk Hogan.
That's right. And Shawn Michaels and whatever.
The thing about the Wildman story is it's been told already a few times. We just people kind of missed it. There was a movie back in the early 80s called Blood and Guts.
Yep. Yep.
Right? I'm sure you guys have seen it. It was filmed in Hamilton with a bunch of local guys. Farmer Pete's in it. Silent Bob Mackey's in it. A bunch of locals are in it. Bull Johnson obviously is in it. I think they used his ring. I'm not sure if he was in it, but I think Danny Johnson is in it.
Danny was, yeah.
Yeah. That story, that is the wild man story. That is Dave McKinley fighting the big corporate promoter from the city.
Yeah.
Right? It's exactly this. And I remember watching that as a kid on Channel 7. If you're from Toronto, you know what, city TV is.
Yep.
Watching it every time it was on, I said, I watched it like 100 times. It's been told his story just in a different, kind of, light.
Yeah.
No bear involved in that movie, but you got the concept of his struggle through that movie. And it's funny enough, like a few years ago, a little while ago now, I rented a ring to a TV pilot with Bret Hart and Roddy Piper, and the story was the same.
Oh, really?
A promoter, aging wrestler, you know what I mean, kind of thing, taking on the bigger promoter, right? Trying to steal his talent away, kind of thing. And I remember like, wow, this is exactly like the Bear Man story, right? Basically the same thing. Obviously that pilot never took off.
Mm-hmm.
I would have liked it, but there, I think it's just the story is chomping at the bit. I think eventually it'll be a big story. It was a big story when it happened, Dave's issues, right, with the bear, obviously, and the fiance, and then him dying later in the car crash. It was worldwide news, especially in the wrestling world.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, a lot of these old timers that you see these shoot videos of, like Sabu, Kevin Sullivan, they all talk about the Bear Man.
Yep.
Right, and the incidents and all that stuff that happened in between. So I think the story needs to be told. Hopefully it gets told really soon. And I think people are really going to be interested. It's a very sad story, obviously, tragic story, but it's also, can be uplifting and inspirational, I think.
Yeah. Cool. That's cool. That's cool to hear. I love it. I love it. I love meeting you and Jay. And that was that day was just spectacular for me. I wish I hadn't moved away so we could get together again.
And that's the thing I get from a lot of the interviews I do with some of these older guys and gals is, you know what? At first they don't know me. They think I'm suspicious, and they're kind of, but as soon as I start talking about, they know that I know, my stuff and a little, and know the story, they start opening up. When the big guys are like, they start almost crying when they start talking about Dave and some of the stuff they went through with Dave. But towards the end of every interview, these guys all feel great, for talking.
Yeah.
And they feel great that someone is out here trying to capture the story, at least at some level. They just love talking, and they all thank me after and say, wow, it's great that you're doing this. I hope it works out.
Yeah.
I hope it gets, this happens, right? Everybody comes away after a meeting with me and Jay in our interviews. They come away, I think, just, it's almost like therapy for them.
Yeah.
Right? To let it all out. Because, I'm sure their wives or their kids have heard all the stories. They're tired of hearing the stories. But for them to talk about all that stuff they went through on the road, on the shows, what, they had to do, like I said, they just need to release it.
Yeah.
And they're happy to do it. And they come away great. It's like I said, it's like going to a spa, feeling great afterwards.
That's great.
Yeah, it must be very therapeutic.
Yeah. Because like I said, a lot of they're very surprised when I call them up and that I want to talk to them. They're like, really? They can't believe it. But,
it's probably easier to find people now with social media and stuff like that.
It is, but like I said, it just, I don't know what it is, but maybe it's the universe talking, but these things just fall in my lap sometimes, right? A phone number, a message on Messenger or on Facebook that someone, hey, you should talk to this guy. You should talk to that guy, right? And I've had a few rejections, a few people that don't want to talk to me. But that's okay. You know, maybe I'll keep at it and see what I can get.
Yeah.
One person always leads to another. It's like like they say, it's 7 degrees of separation kind of thing.
That's right.
Right. Sometimes these people don't even know each other, but they know that guy or they know this guy or this girl. And that's how it's been. I don't know. It's been really strange in a sense, this project that we're doing, how it's snowballing, really.
That's so cool. That is so cool. I'm just beside myself when I think about it. And I put it on the back burner. I forget about it. Yeah, I see you liking something or something on our pages, and then I think, oh yeah, oh man, oh I can't wait.
Yeah, I'm not trying to let the cat. Well, I guess I did let the cat out of the bag, but slowly I was, posting things, and people are asking me questions, and I get private messages every now and then, and I don't want to, just say too much now.
Yeah, exactly. Of course.
The stuff we do have now is really good. It's really interesting. And like I said, hopefully we get it all together. At least something to show you guys this before the end of the year.
Yep.
And hopefully, even more next year.
Cool.
Here's a question for both of you guys. Where would you put Dave against Frank and George Cannon in the promotional warfare of Ontario? Because they were all around in the 70s, obviously, right?
Yeah.
Well, Dave goes back even to like the late 60s. He's, it's just, I heard he was promoting shows as early as 1971, right? He was promoting his own show as well as obviously traveling North America, with, by himself and then later with the Bears. Like, as far as promoting wise, I think he did it better than the Tunnies and George, because I think it had a combination of the way the way him and Conrad designed the posters. Conrad being his stepson. You saw the poster on the convenience store or your town, and you were like drawn into this poster with the faces and the bear and the girls and the bloody faces. It's like, holy, whatever this is, I got to see this. Mm-hmm. Right? Whereas you look at George Cannon's posters or the Tunnies, is very, very plain, very basic. You had a picture of Whipper or whoever, and it didn't say much to you.
Yeah.
They went off. Well, mostly the Tunnies went off how big they were at the time, right? Like the Maple Leaf Gardens
and their TV. Yeah.
And their TV. It's like they put no effort into their posters, whereas Dave's posters and his like he says in the video, I'm a digger. You know what I mean? He works hard. He's in these towns putting up posters 2-3 weeks before. He's putting the ads in the papers. He's doing it all himself. Right? And I think he was better in that sense as a promoter, because what's a promoter do? He gets the word out.
That's right.
Promotes the show with whatever means they have. And back then, Dave just had his pickup truck and a bunch of posters. Maybe the odd radio ad back then. And that was it. Whereas Tunnies and George had TV. All they had to do is do their weekly TV program.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Wow.
Well, what do you think?
I think I agree 100% that's. I remember being a kid and seeing the posters all over Ontario. Holy smokes! And no one in my family was a fan, but they knew I was. And it's like, oh man, look at that! It's like glowing orange on the telephone pole up on Highway 10 in Rowan Sound or something, right? And you freaked out. And I think in the drawing heat book, the professor said something like, "Be part of the action," right? And that's what Dave's Maple Leaf Gardens definitely wasn't be part of the action. Maple Leaf Gardens was sit in your seat and be quiet and enjoy the show. Yeah. Whereas Dave's show, you could get up and you could hit the ring, and if you were brave enough, you could jump in the ring, if nobody was in the ring and stuff like that. And it's completely different ball of wax altogether. One man show, definitely, right?
I talked to Harry D referee. I don't know if you know him. He works for TNA right now. And he didn't know Dave. He came later after Dave. But he said, growing up in Hamilton, he said, you knew when Dave was going to be in town because there was a poster in every store window, on the street that he lived on.
Yeah.
Right? He's like, you couldn't get he said his aunt used to own a hair salon, and there was a poster in her window.
Yeah.
Like you knew. And then the day of the show, he said you'd see the bear coming down the street, down the street from the arena. And, he would even up to the day of the show be walking the bear around, take him to the park, and, just to get extra people in the door.
Yeah.
Like a circus, because he grew, he did work in the circus for a little bit. He was or the carnival system, I should say. Yeah. So he had that mentality of a traveling carnival.
Yeah.
He took that concept into the wrestling, which, we know now that wrestling evolved from the carnival system.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's wild.
So I say, like I said, I'll reiterate, and I say he was better at promoting than any of those, and both those guys. Not that they weren't great, those two guys, the Tunnies and George Cannon. But
it's kind of hard not to make money as a Tunny when you have the Chic in the 70s.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, like the Chic had like Wes will say, he outdrew his welcome in Toronto. But when he did Dave's shows, he was new again because no one had seen him in the outskirts, in the small towns in Ontario, outside of Toronto, outside of London, outside of where, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So to that crowd, the Chic was, born again.
Yep.
Because, they probably saw him on TV. They never saw him, the arena down the street from their house.
Yeah.
He was on his tail end of the career when the Bearman, though, Wes always told me.
What's that?
The Chic was like on the tail end of his career when he started working for the Bearman.
But he was new to these small towns in a sense, right?
Yeah.
He was new to me in 1987 when I saw him at Downsview Arena. I'm like, oh man, that's the Chic.
Yeah.
I never saw him before. I barely saw him on TV because it was, before my time, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I saw him, carving up, Terry SR, in a 2-minute match. I'm like, whoa, what just happened?
Yeah.
Right? Like I never seen this before in my life, and I'm sitting right there, right in the front row. No guardrails, no nothing, no protection from this guy.
That's right.
He was new again. Like I said, even though he was old, you could tell he was old, but he just still had that because he was in a different town, a smaller town, different arena.
And he still had tons of charisma still and drawing power, even like in those small towns. He could still, without a doubt, not even blinking, draw 500 people with just seeing the poster, right? With Chic versus whoever.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I went, because I wanted to see the Chic. Yeah, I knew he was getting old, so I wanted to see him.
Yeah, and that's why I went too. I never saw him at the Gardens, but I saw him quite a few times on Dave's shows, and the first time was like he just walked like right there. The Chic, the real guy, just walked like 5 feet away from me, and he looked at me for half a second, like,
Yeah. And that's the thing I was doing with my interviews with all these guys. I wasn't just talking about Dave. I was talking about a lot of the guys that Dave used, and Chic was one of the main things I would ask everybody. Yeah. And everybody had a story.
I would.
Everybody had, even the wrestlers, would say, you know what? I was in the wrestling business, but when the Chic walked in the room, you were like, whoa, you were scared.
Mm-hmm.
Even though, they're in the business, they still, probably the first time they met him or seen him, they were like, take it back. Even a full-fledged wrestler. But everybody had a story about the Chic. And it's going to be interesting. Like I said, with the interviews I did, I would talk about a lot of the different guys, not just Dave, but Andre and Chris Colt and, Apache Lou.
Yeah.
Some people would know him as Apache Lou. So we talked about Mighty Igor. I got some great stories about Mighty Igor. Just because it wasn't just Dave; it was his whole crew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Misfits and Freaks that made
That's so funny.
made the show great. It made Dave great too, right?
I always say to Wes all the time that I look at Dave as like a person that enhanced talent. Because if you look at it, he had Kevin Sullivan, he had Nancy Benoit, you know what I mean? Like the older guys coming off the Maple Leaf circuit would probably help all these new guys, right? Because I didn't even know Bobby Heenan worked for the Bearmen.
Oh yeah, Pretty Boy
So
Heenan.
it's like,
Yeah.
I'm like, pretty boy Bobby Heenan. I'm just like, I didn't even, to me, he's a commentator,
Yeah.
right? He was a
Yeah.
manager and a commentator for WCW.
Yeah. No one knew he was an actual wrestler.
Yeah, right? Ric Flair always says he was a great
for
worker.
that, right? Yeah. Oh yeah. There's some great shoot interviews with Bobby Heenan talking about wrestling the bear. You ever see those? Amazing.
No, I gotta look that up on
He
YouTube.
wrestled the bear many times. And he said this bear was amazing. This bear, like, he would pretend to choke the bear with a towel, and he could have sworn the bear was like selling the choke. You know what I mean? He's like, this bear knows what he's doing. He knows how to work. You know what I mean? He just knew the bear. It's like he was amazed how good this bear was.
Yeah.
I believe it was Terrible Ted. He just said this bear is great.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, that's cool. Thank you very much for helping us out and coming on, Rob. It's been awesome talking with you again. And Jesse, do you have anything to say?
No, Rob, if you want to promote anything else, like your stuff or where to reach you, if you want to rent a ring or anything, you can say it now.
Yeah, well, if you want a ring, I guess, for any events or TV shows, movies, whatever you got, you can find me on Instagram under Pro Ring Rentals.
Okay.
Right. And if you want, if you want to come out to the Demand Lucha shows, we run like in the city. We're going to be in Kitchener. We're going to be in Niagara Falls in December. And January, we're going to be in Oshawa and London. If you want to come out to see us. And other than that, I hope that the project I'm working on, I hope we can get it out really soon to show everybody.
That'll be great. We're so looking forward to it also. Thank you very much. And again, like I said, you made my day when I was contacted, and that was fantastic. It was blowing away.
You're still going on about that, eh?
Well, it was a big deal. And it was nice to be recognized as first and the stepping stone, kind of like. And everything, even on the Facebook page, which was my main focus at the time, the Wildmen, even everything blossomed from there, because the guys that you put us in contact with that liked the page and came on board, and that was fascinating also. So it's really cool, and it's been really interesting.
Well, one of the reasons I wanted to do this project is I saw your page. And I saw all the interest, I saw all the members, and I saw all the people contributing. I'm like, wow, being, I guess, a wrestler promoter, I saw, there's interest in this.
Mm-hmm.
There's genuine interest, and not just from people in Ontario. You got people from BC, you got people from the States, always inputting into the site and adding things, right? So I'm like, wow, there's actually a market for this story. That's why, that's what encouraged me to start it, because it's not just a regional thing. I think it could be North American and even worldwide thing. Interest in this story.
Cool.
And, I think because, like I said, I found your page and I saw all the work you did and put into it. I go, wow, this, what? I think people are gonna like this.
I hope so too. I know I am, and Jesse is gonna learn so much.
Yeah, little Jesse coming up in the historian ranks, trying to learn as much as I can here.
Support all of the podcasts here on the Dynasty Wrestling Podcast Network. Best way to do that is go to our Pro Wrestling Tees store. It is at ProWrestlingTees.com/TheDaveDynasty. There you will find all of the shirts that we offer: I Heart Old School Wrestling, Bruiser Buddy, the Podcast Mask shirt, and of course, the official shirts for the Ontario Wildmen and the Ring a Ding Dong Dandy podcast. Visit ProWrestlingTees.com/TheDaveDynasty, order a shirt, and support the network. If you would also like to support, you can join our Patreon. It's at patreon.com/Dave Dynasty. There you will get exclusive audio and video clips, early releases on podcasts, and much, much more. And if you would just like to make one-time contributions to support us, you can go to paypal.me/TheDaveDynasty. Thank you for supporting us. Thank you for listening. Continue to support independent wrestling podcast.
And we're back. Wes, that was friggin' fun, man, talking to Rob.
That was amazing. Amazing guy, amazing story. And it's great to just publicize him as a wrestler and a trainer and a promoter, let alone what he told us at the end there. That was amazing about the Wildman project. So there, everybody, hopefully there's going to be something fantastic coming down the pipe about the Wildman, Bearman, Dave McKegney. So, yeah, that was super. Thank you so much, Rob, for speaking with us, taking some time out for us tonight.
Yeah, huge thanks to Rob again for coming out. This is the first time we've done a special guest episode, so we were even nervous about how to do it, how to approach it. And then with Wes talking to Rob before, we're like, well, let's see if he wants to come out and talk. And he's well known on the independent circuit. I mean, you know, even he said Channing Decker's out there hustling. Like, he is, man. I can vouch for that. I've seen Decker. He's always out there doing stuff. So, you know, it was good to learn about his upcoming in Ontario, too, and coming to Canada and learning and, like, watching wrestling and how it was always wrestling for him. And it's friggin' awesome, man. That was fun.
That was super fun.
Before we go, we have to talk about our Facebook pages.
Yeah, we decided that we would create a new Facebook page, and this is our third one. And you know, I'm dreaming big, and I'm thinking, you know, who knows what else we can do. But this is so exciting. Jesse came up with a fantastic name, and we're posting ads and clippings and anything from all over the world now, not just Ontario, not just the Wildman, but everywhere. And the traffic has already been fantastic. It's not even a week, right? It's what, 3 days old?
Not even 3 days. It's been about a day. I made it yesterday.
Oh, okay. So that means I posted stuff already on it. So, yeah.
Yeah, we've been posting already. Historians are coming in. The group is called National Wrestling Clipping Alliance.
Yeah, it's a fantastic name. It's just so cool. Great name. I'm happy that you came up with that idea. Although you had a bunch of other ideas too, like Wes's Slap Happy clipping ad show and stuff like that. So that didn't really appeal to us. So, but it's so cool, and we've still got the Wildman tribute page and Ontario Wrestling Clippings of the Past, which we're still heavily involved in, and we love all the people out there to like the page, come on board. See what's going on. Let us know via the Facebook pages if you want to see anything else, or you're interested in this, or your own story about any kind of wrestling that you would have went to when you were younger, or when you were an adult, or anything. We just want to share. That's right. Just share everything, right, Jess?
Yeah. I've been the reason we like to share too is we get joy out of bringing back memories. Remember, I posted in the Maple Leaf Wrestling Archive group a clipping, and some guy's like, dude, I've been looking for this event for years. Like, this was my first ever wrestling show, and you just posted the clipping of it. And I'm just like, dude, like, save it to your phone, man. Like,
yeah,
it's all, like, so many people have shared with me, and I believe in my heart, and after everything, learning about your friend Terry Dart, like, he would want to be his collection be posted online. He would be, if he was still here, he would be helping us with these groups and posting online and educating too, right? So now we have the Ontario Wrestling Clippings of the Past, right, where we focus purely on Ontario. We have the Wildman, where we focus on Dave. And then now we have National Wrestling Clippings Alliance, and we already have historians jumping in on the action and posting, hey, looking in Ohio, hey, looking in New York, right? Today I posted in Hawaii, in Texas, like anywhere and anywhere. We're just trying to get everyone together and post and talk and keep the wrestling history alive.
Keep the wrestling history alive and share it out, buddy. It's what my mantra is, and you're learning it too, and it's awesome. I love it. I absolutely love it. It's the cat's ass.
That's right. And we're also on Twitter at Wildmen Podcast. Our Twitter follows have come up, and it's fantastic. I'm on there making connections. I talked to our fellow ring-a-ding-dong dandy guys out there in Calgary, and Dave from Toronto is always commenting on my Twitter. Apparently, Wrestling Dave. Apparently, a lot of guys know who he is. But the big thing for us is the email. We're going to repeat it once again. If you email us a request for what did you watch, or a review of the show, or topics of the show, just information of what you think of me and Wes and how we are doing after 7 episodes. If you email that to Wes and Jesse Wildman1 at gmail.com. That's WESANDJESSEWILDMAN1 at gmail.com. If you email us a review of the show or something for what did you watch or anything like that involves with the show and your shipping information, we will send you out a piece of wrestling history just for our mistake of the email from last month's episode on the Whipper Watson one.
Yep. And we have absolutely no problems helping out other people looking for stuff. We're thinking about putting little booklets together for different wrestlers. If anyone has anything like that they would like to see, let us know. We'll figure something out. It's just, we're so excited to be sharing here. And Jesse, as usual, I want to say thank you very much for being the technical advisor. And I guess we're going to probably say bye-bye, right?
Yeah, next month we're doing another special guest. If all things go correct, we should have Paige Sutherland on here next month. And we're going to talk about her father, Kurt Von Hess.
Yeah, he's an icon here in Ontario, and he worked all over North America. Paige,
huge name in Detroit.
Yeah, huge in Detroit. Yeah, they have the NWA World Tag Team titles in Detroit. She is doing a marvelous job of keeping her father's memory alive. And when I find a new Big Bill Terry clipping or ad or something somewhere, I send it right away to her, because she's doing a chronology of her father's career still. And she was young, but she's got fantastic wrestling memories about traveling with on the wrestling circuits with him.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Another interesting interview. Hopefully it goes as well as this one that I did with Rob, man.
Yep, that's going to be great. Hopefully great. And I'm blown away by Rob. That I'm just so excited.
Yeah, that was awesome.
That was good. So good. Way to be, Jesse.
Until next month, everybody.
Yep.
I'm Jess.
And I'm Wes.
And we are the Ontario Wildmen.
Wildmen, yeah, I know.
Yeah.